Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Float, Odyssey, Telegram, and the Preppers Broadcast Network. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim, and today is June the 16th, 2022, and this is episode 128 of the Workshop Podcast. So how is everyone? It's been a beautiful but rainy summer week here. Finally got a day where we could get out and do some serious mowing, which was excellent. Tonight, we are going to talk about, I hope this isn't too deep of a cut. So for you Americans out there, if you don't know who Red Green is, we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but that's okay. We are going to talk about the preparedness, repairedness, and handyman advice and wisdom that he shared on his show over damn near a decade and a half. But we're going to get into that in a little bit. First, we got some announcements for you. So let's dig right in. So it is official, folks. We are in the coffee business. I am rather excited. If you want to check it out, drop the CanadianCoffeeCompany.ca. That is our URL. That's where we're at. It's available to Americans as well, but the shipping's a little cost prohibitive right at the moment. We're going to work that out. But Liberty Meat Solutions says, Red Green, yes, over on Telegram. Nice to have you, Liberty. So yes, we are officially in the coffee business. It took way too damn long for the people that were putting together our website and shopping cart to get these bugs figured out. But you know what? Doesn't matter. It's now there. We now have an option. I got tired of having to order my coffee from my American friends. Not that I didn't want to, but shipping was crazy. So my wife and I decided, you know what? Let's do it. So it's CanadianCoffeeCompany.ca. And if you go over there and check out the merch section, I even snuck in a couple of Toolman Tim's workshop items. There's a tumbler, I believe, and a hoodie. But anyway, that's for you to discover and check out. So anyway, we'll be doing a coffee giveaway down the road here, but I'm rather excited. Secondly, for those of you who have been asking about it, the Patch of the Month Club, I finally had a couple of days of rain. The first two designs for the Patch of the Month Club have been sent to the embroiderer. As soon as I get samples, we are going to launch it. There's a few things going to be coming in I'm toying with, but there's going to be a patch of the month, a sticker of the month, and then there's going to be some added bonus content or bonuses for people who subscribe, kind of like back-end membership content. I don't know exactly, haven't completely figured it out, but I'm excited. I know a lot of people love those tactical patches, morale patches, whatever you want to call them. And I've got the first 3 months designs worked out, and it's going to be kind of cool. All right. And finally, we hit 1,000 followers. Apparently they're called followers over on TikTok. My daughter tells me it's a TikTok account, not a channel. So I'll sound like an old man if I call it the TikTok channel. But we hit 1,000 subscribers today, well over 1,100. We had a video that went rather viral, almost hit 500,000 views, which was kind of cool. It is a whole nother beast over there. But if you are a TikTok user, you can check out the link. I pinned it in the YouTube comments. And of course, it's always in the description wherever you are. And finally, one last really cool piece of news, I guess, from the workshop. Thanks, Liberty. Appreciate that. I don't know if any of you guys remember the show from Discovery Channel in the early 2000s called Man Tracker. Well, his name is Terry Grant. He lives in Alberta, and he is going to be coming on the workshop July 21st. I'm rather excited. Chatted with him last night and got a 100% confirmation that he's coming on. He's going to talk about his time developing this show. And he's going, well, just tell his whole story because I love that. And then he's also going to talk about animal tracking, human tracking, the whole works. I was excited, especially when I found out he was a fellow Albertan. Thought it'd be great. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. And Gipper over on the PBN chat group says his show is on PBS talking about Red Green, kind of a cult following, I think, rather than widespread. And of course, he quotes, if they don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. Ain't that the truth? Okay, so today's tool. This one was recommended to me from Ted McDonald. Just picked it up the other day, and you can tell it's going to go into the everyday use, at least when I'm using a pencil. So it is called the Pencil Pull Pro. Say that 10 times fast. Made in America. It has a rubber sleeve on the end of it that slides over a pen, a pencil, a carpenter's pencil, or a Sharpie. And then it has a little clip-on that can clip onto your pocket or your tool belt. And it has a retractable string on it so that you're never going to lose your carpenter's pencil. Great for us old men that set things down and completely forget where we put them. So there's that. So I hope you enjoy that. And thanks, Ted, for that recommendation. I love it. Now, I don't know how, as far as, okay, the main content tonight is going to be all about Red Green. We're going to take, I've got 19 quotes of his. We're going to pull a lesson out of each one. There'll be some humor in it. It'll be quite a bit of fun. And depending on where the time goes, we may or may not jump into something totally unrelated at the end. I found this really cool, I don't know. Anyway, it's an article about my home province where I grew up in Nova Scotia, about a disagreement between some neighbors. And I thought maybe we would have a bit of a discussion, or at least I would share my thoughts, and give you guys some food for thought. If we don't get to that tonight, we'll add it into another episode. But yeah, so let's dive in, guys. So first off, a bunch of you are probably saying, well, okay. Few of you who got this in your podcast is probably wondering who in the hell is Red Green. And if you don't know who Red Green is, you can look at the thumbnail for the YouTube tonight. He loved to wear plaid and suspenders, and he hung out at the Possum Lodge, I guess would be the way to talk about it. Really interesting dude. I'm going to try to get Steve Smith, the actor who played Red, to come on the show sometime. I think it would be quite fun if we could. So anyway, if you're wondering, he was the Canadian version of Tim the Toolman Taylor in the early 90s, the 2000s. He was, a handy guy that was prone to accidents and had just all around hilarity would ensue whenever he was on TV. It was on the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Canada, the whole way through. And apparently, I assumed he must have got some play on the US networks as well, but it was cross-played over on PBS. And he got quite a bit of play, but more of a cult following. He, I would say, was single-handedly responsible for the resurgence in duct tape and the whole idea of duct tape being the handyman's secret weapon. That was his phrase as well. But the whole show, it was kind of a satire of those Sunday afternoon PBS fishing shows, handyman shows. They were on all the time. They were kind of the soundtrack to my Sunday afternoons that were always playing in my house. I enjoyed them, but he was really good at making fun of them. Red, that's his first name anyway. He kind of reminded me of a cross between, or his show reminded me of a cross between this old house, those Sunday afternoon fishing shows, and of course, Home Improvement, if you guys remember that. He was great. I loved it. A really humble kind of guy. I watched a few interviews with him recently just to kind of prep for this show. So he first started the Red Green character back in I believe it was the late 70s. He was a traveling comedian, like so many comedians get started out. And he created the show to be a spoof of all of those. Apparently there was an actual show, I can't remember the name right at the moment, where the guy would just come on and they would show silent fishing videos and the guys would narrate over top of it. I guess if you like fishing, that's cool, but that's not my shtick. But anyway, that's where he started. The show ran for 15 seasons. It ended with exactly 300 episodes. Always love nice round numbers like that. And then Steve started touring and did the character as a live show for quite a few years. He's since retired a couple of years ago, and now he does like a live version. Like a cinematic podcast. Maybe that's the right term for it, but he does a podcast where they basically reenact some of the characters, and it has a script. I guess it's quite entertaining. He's been married for 56 years. And he's 76 years old, and just sounds like a really interesting, kind of cool dude. And I don't know if Letty is still in here or not, but if any of you guys remember Mystery Science Theater 3000, I was a bit of a cult fan of that. It didn't get a lot of play in Canada, but it was pretty funny. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Steve Smith, Red Green, was at the height of his popularity, he got another TV show on the Space Channel here in Canada. And it was called The Steve Smith Playhouse. Now, if you guys want to see something interesting, if I think of it, I will try to throw the link in the description. But he did 13 episodes of old, where the copyright had expired on them. It took, just like Mystery Science 3, try that again, Tim. Just like Mystery Science Theater 3000, they took these old black and white movies, Liberty, yeah, and they cut them down to 30 minutes. And what he did was he redid the voice for the main character. Sexual innuendos were thrown around, and just absolutely hilarity ensued once again. So if you're looking for something fun, there's only 13 episodes, and they're like 22 minutes a piece because they were 30 with commercials. It is a gem. I'm surprised he never went back and did it, because it'd be the type of thing that you could do well into retirement. But I know Mystery Science ran into a lot of rights and, who owns what kind of issues. So, but yeah, anyway, kind of interesting. The guy was hilarious. And I went back and I watched a few interviews with him on his farewell tour just to see, I just wanted to get a feel for where the guy was at now. And so Liberty wants to know, Letty wants to know what it was called again. It was called the Steve Smith Playhouse. And with a name like Steve Smith, it's about as generic as John Smith. But yeah, it's called the Steve Smith Playhouse. There's only 13 episodes. And yeah, you can find it on YouTube. It was quite funny. So yeah, I watched an interview with him. He was getting ready to do one of his final shows, and sounded like a fairly, I wouldn't say young guy, but about my age, interviewing him. And they asked him, like, why do you think the red green character really took hold with Canadians, and especially the rural Canadians? And then he said, why do you go there, and that kind of thing. And I really like this quote. He said, well, because they have to make do with what they have. He said, it's the whole rural mindset. The first tool they pick up, or the first tool they reach for when something breaks around the house, isn't the cell phone. And I thought, wow, if that doesn't sum up preparedness, when we want to be self-sufficient, hey, Martinson family, when we want to be self-sufficient and fix things for ourselves, the first tool we should reach for shouldn't be the cell phone to call someone else to come and fix it. Got to have that rural mindset. And that really, really stuck with me. I loved it. So let's dive in. So these quotes are funny. A few of them I've probably taken some artistic liberty with, maybe even taken them slightly out of context for the, overtly Canadian references. I will do my best to explain them to my American counterparts. I really think there's only one, and it's the very first one. So let's dive in, guys. So he had a lot of really famous sayings. And the first one was something that he ended a lot of his shows with. And he would always look at the camera and he would say, keep your stick on the ice. And that of course, that's 100% Canadian. That is a hockey saying. And it's one of those things that you would hear coaches standing up on the bench, screaming at their players, constantly just going, hey, keep your stick on the ice. And it has a few meanings, but it was kind of cool. And the first thing is, be ready for anything. In other words, if you have your stick down on the ice, you're ready to pass, you're ready to shoot, you're ready to skate. You're in the best position to react to something bad or good that's going to happen. But if you get your hands up in the air and you're waving them all around, you're distracted, you're not doing what you should do, you're just not going to be able to respond to a bad situation in that instance. And also, chill out. Having your stick on the ice gets your focus back in the game. It helps you to stay calm. It helps you to not be all over the place. But the other thing, and this was the one that I always thought about as a kid, was he's talking about playing clean or living a good life. Don't be careless, because the first thing you do when you lift your stick up is you catch somebody in the eye, you get a high sticking penalty, and that's bad enough because you hurt somebody unintentionally because you were being careless. But worse than that, what would end up happening was you high stick somebody, you get some blood or whatever. The other team is going to be out looking for retribution. So you're going to make yourself an enemy that you didn't mean to, simply by being careless. You injured somebody, and now you're going to get your ass handed to you simply because you didn't do what you're supposed to do. You weren't kind of following the rules the way you should. And, we're all about rule breaking and that sort of thing. But when we're careless, simply because we're just not paying attention, and you end up hurting somebody, you're going to have a bad day, and someone else is going to have a bad day. And we never want to, how do you want to put it? We never want to attract undue attention to ourselves, right? So yeah, I always loved that. The keep your stick on the ice. It wasn't a funny saying. It was just kind of a cool saying that he always said. And that was one of his big catchphrases for sure. And then the second one, and if any of you guys the first three, maybe even the first four, just about anybody who even watched the show in passing, or maybe even just saw YouTube clips, will remember. But there's some deeper cuts in here too. So number 2, he always said the handyman's secret weapon was duct tape. And I remember in the 90s and the early 2000s, everyone was like, oh yeah, we'll just fix it with duct tape, right? If it moves and it shouldn't, use duct tape. If it doesn't move and it should, use WD-40. And Red Green was the guy that always talked about the handyman's secret weapon being duct tape. He actually single-handedly increased the sales of 3M's duct tape to the point where they hired him on as a spokesperson after the fact because he talked about it so much. Now, the thing about duct tape, and you guys probably know this, is it's not really the best tape in the world, but it's the tape of 1,000 uses. It's the tape that every person has in their junk drawer. It's cheap. You can buy it at Dollar Tree. You can buy it at Dollar General. You can buy it at Walmart. You can buy it at Home Depot. And everybody seems to have it. It's the type of thing that you always got to make use of what you have around, right? So that's one of those preparedness mindsets, is making do with what you have. I always think of the old farmer's mindset, right? I mean, they lived 30, 40 miles from town, and their idea was maybe once a month, every couple of weeks, they'd go into town for supplies. But if they had to build some hinges, well, then you would absolutely cut up an old tire and make a hinge out of it. You need to make a gate, you cut a tree down. You needed nails, you pulled them out of that old board that's sitting over there in the junk pile. You made do with what you had. And you knew how to use everything that you had, and you had multiple uses for everything because you didn't have everything on hand. So, for instance, you want something to stick, you use duct tape. That was just your option. And Martinson family says it sticks to itself as well. Yeah, I'm going to bring that one up. It absolutely does. Sticks really well. I've used in a pinch. I remember as a kid getting ready to go to church, and you'd have lint on your pants or lint on your shirt, or mom would, and she'd be like, "Oh, grab some duct tape," and she'd roll it inside out and have it sticking to itself. Becky's really good at that too, and just pat all around. And if that's all you had, it was a great lint roller too. But the whole idea, handyman secret weapon, duct tape. I mean, maybe we got a bunch of secret weapons, but the big thing is know what you got on hand. Think outside the box to use things for reasons that you might not, because when duct tape first came out, it was just for ductwork. That was it. And then all of a sudden people are like, hey, let's use that for everything. Like, it's become cliche now, right? Everybody calls it MacGyver in it. I don't know how MacGyver, they always said MacGyver could fix anything with what was like a paper clip and duct tape. Well, in this instance, it really was Red Green who popularized it. So the next one, this one was kind of funny. I was going to leave this one to the end, but whatever. So again, close to the end, last couple of things he would say. This one here was talking about his wife. He'd always say, well, if she don't find you, or if she doesn't find you handsome, she should at least find you handy. And of course, I always joke about that, and I give it some thought. And a bit of a stretch, but I mean, first off, find yourself a partner that finds you both. Find a wife or a husband that always thinks you're handsome or beautiful, no matter what. That's the first thing. And get shit done. Talk about handy. That seems to be a lost art a little bit, and the art of preparedness seems to be lost, and that's okay. I don't know. There's no blame there. It's just a generational thing. So if you're going to be a good partner, a good husband or a good wife, pull your weight, get shit done, fix stuff if you can. But here's the thing. The part about being handy, and I always like this, is if you don't know how to fix something, learn. Don't be scared to experiment. Don't be scared to try new tools, don't be scared to go to YouTube University and become handy, because the thing is, you can't do anything about the fact that you're handsome or not handsome, but you sure as shit can do something about whether you're handy or not handy. So that's the thing that's in your control. So fix it, do it, be better, learn, troubleshoot, all of that. Okay. And number 4, and this one, I always love this. He always says, and remember, I'm pulling for you, because we're all in this together. And that one just makes me warm. It blesses my heart just to hear that even now, because, even as a teenager in the 90s, when he would say that, he looked like an old man at that time, but, he was probably in his late 40s, and now he's in his early to mid 70s. So that shows where time goes, but it always made you feel good. You're like, oh yeah, he's closing up with that because he means it. And he was playing a character on TV, but you felt it, right? So don't go lone wolf. As preppers, as preparedness people, as handyman, whatever, we all love to just be by ourselves, but we can't. We got to learn from people. We got to lean on people. We got to build relationships. We got to build community. We got to find people we can learn from. I got a call today from someone, and if you're in the Telegram group, you'll know who it was. I'm not going to name names or anything, but they had a brand new generator that they couldn't get started. And they asked if we could get some help, and I called to hopefully do some troubleshooting, but it's pretty hard to troubleshoot just over audio, but we did what we could. I'm not sure if they've succeeded yet or not, but they were so worried about, they said, I'm sorry, Tim, I probably look like a bad prepper. I said, no, nobody looks like a bad prepper. If you don't know how to do something, if you haven't done something proper, you haven't done it to begin with, no big friggin' deal. Ask somebody. We're all in this together. We've all made mistakes. We've all neglected maintenance. We've all not learned something that we should have, or just haven't done shit that we should have. And you know what? That's why we build community. We're all in this together so that we can support each other, so we can teach each other, and so we can help each other when maybe we didn't do something we should have. Maybe we did. Doesn't matter. We all mess up. That's okay. We're all going to help each other out. And that's what a community is all about. That's what PBN's about. That's what the workshop's about. Hey, apartment prepper, how are you? That's nice to have you in here. She is coming on the show. I don't have my schedule right in front of me right now, but she will be on the show in the next 6 weeks or so, talking about prepping in small spaces. So I'm excited to have her on there. It's going to be great. I reached out to her because who better to know about prepping in small spaces than someone who literally calls themselves the apartment prepper? I'm excited. It's going to be good to have her on. All right, number 5. Let's throw this one up here. Remember, this is a good one. It says, remember, you may have to grow old, but you don't have to mature. Father Time's coming for us all, and we don't have a choice. If we stop growing old, well, there ain't much you can do about that. But you also, Hunter, hey, Hunter, how are you? Great to have you. Says, messing up, y'all talking about me. Talking about all of us, because us as preppers, us as handymen, as, preparedness people, we're all going to screw up. Hey, Justin, good day, sir. How are you? 30-day review dropping by. So remember, you may have to grow old, but you don't have to mature. So what do I say there? Don't take life too serious. If you know me, one thing I always am is serious. Never laugh, never tell a joke, never sarcastic, just straight up serious all the time. Yeah, I'm kidding, but anyway, make time to laugh, guys. Like, do things like you might get down the road and you're like, okay, I'm worried about XYZ, whatever the, issue du jour is right now in the world. You're like, the world's going to end. I need to prep. You know what? Whether it does or it doesn't, you got to take time and relax. You got to have a little bit of fun, go to the movies with your missus, do things that make you feel young, whatever it is. Take a walk on the beach, go to the movies, go out for ice cream, just go on a date. It doesn't matter. But just because you're getting older doesn't mean you got to act like an old friggin' fogey. I might embrace my oldness. I joke about it, but I do lots of things. I got up on the roof the other day. I was screwing down the metal roofing up on the new covered deck, and my wife thinks I'm an idiot. And I go up there and jump around, not quite like a monkey, not like I used to, but I still get up there and do it. Do things that are just stupid or fun, or that's half the reason I do my movie episodes, is because I enjoy it. And you know what? If other people don't, that's okay too. But just, always water balloons. Hunter says water balloons. I love it. Unless you're talking about throwing them at me while I'm up on the roof, but that's another story. So no, but yeah, just don't take life too serious. And it's pretty funny how we can find insight from a 25-year-old TV character. But yeah, I just enjoy it. I think the man was hilarious and he had a lot of good things to say. So here's a good one. Number 6. Red Green was known to say, when the going gets tough, switch to power tools. And I almost think that could be my mantra for this channel, because what have I said before, and what a lot of people say? Work smarter, not harder. Dad always said, I always had to laugh, but we have a store up here called Canadian Tire, but it's more of a tool store than it is a tire store. And every year at Christmas, Dad would get a couple of gift cards, and he'd go and buy a tool that he never had before. So one was like a dead blow hammer. There are those plastic hammers that have quite a bit of sand inside them, and you can hit with them, but they don't leave a mark. And he would come home and he would always say, Ann, or talking to my wife, to my mom, or telling me, he's like, boy, I don't know what I ever did without that tool. And he's right. It's funny. Once you have a tool, you always find 1,000 uses for it. But a lot of times, if you ever get yourself knackered, you paint yourself in a corner, for instance, right? And you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to solve whatever this is. I cut this board wrong. I built this wrong. The water's coming in my roof. Whatever it happens to be, take a minute, take a breath, and think, is there a better solution to this? And what could it be? And a lot of times the answer is power tools, except if your name was Gary Bremner. I worked with him at Home Hardware for a lot of years, loved the guy to death, and he was the one who taught me how to put together barbecues. But you always knew things weren't going well when he came out with the cordless drill and the sledgehammer. That's the time that that power tools are not the answer, but most times they are. So when the going gets tough, switch to power tools. Always love that one. And this one, I'm going to read this one a couple of times, but he says, me, talking about red, he says, me, safety forced. And he's not saying first as in, an old timey guy. Forced, Forced. Me, safety forced. So there's a story my wife loves to remind me of, that I once went to the ER twice in 1 week because I got debris in my eye. Now, the first time was understandable, but the second time the doctor basically looked at me and called me a dumbass. He said, don't you own a pair of eye protection, eye goggles? And of course, I just said, well, yeah, but I wasn't wearing them. Sweat was getting in my eyes and it was pissing me off. How many times do we have to hurt ourselves before we take it serious? And that's kind of what it is. He's like, you got to be reminded. I know one time I was building a planter, had my air nailer on there. I was holding it too close, and the 20 gauge brad nail bumped off a knot and went right through the end of my finger. Because, if I was wearing gloves, it probably still would have. Maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe it would have glanced off. I don't know. But I've been too dumb, and I've learned too many dumbass mistakes at the expense of my body simply because safety was forced on me. So what's the answer? Well, I would say, have gear on hand, make it simple, program compliance, like buy yourself a whole bunch of cheap, inexpensive safety glasses and put them where you're going to be doing the work. If you have hearing protection, buy yourself 2 or 3. Every year for a lot of years at Christmas, my daughter Alice would buy me safety glasses and hearing muffs, as she would call them, at the dollar store, and she'd put them in my stocking. And so I have a ton of those kicking around. And if they break, great, no big deal. But she buys them for me every year at Christmas, and I have safety gear around. Now, does that mean I use it all the time? No, but I've gotten a lot better at it over the years. I definitely wear safety glasses all the time. I love my Crossfire safety sunglasses. Those suckers are great. I remember one time again, and sometimes we're our own worst enemy, but I was driving a dump truck and we had to put contaminated soil in the back. So we had to put plastic down before we did. So we'd roll it out and then we'd cut it off with an X-Acto knife. And I can't do anything with gloves. It drives me nuts. But of course, I learned my lesson, took my gloves off, put my hand down to cut the plastic. I was exhausted in the morning and went straight across my pinky finger, down through the nail. Off to the hospital I went for stitches. Safety forced, right? I don't know how many times I've hurt my left hand simply because I didn't put gloves on. It's always the left hand because that's always the hand that's holding things. Tool in the right, hand in the left. One time I was cleaning the chimney at the first place we lived at when we were first married, and wasn't wearing gloves, went in and just took all of the skin off my knuckles from the end, the sharp piece of the pipe. Just stupid, right? Safety forced. How many times do we have to make dumb mistakes before we realize we need to take care of ourselves? Number 8, one man's junk is another man's antique. And if someone thinks rust and dust turns trash into cash, who am I to argue? These people are a lot smarter than we are. Hey, Rachel Brown, nice to have you. So I love this one. This one's great. And this is one of my preparedness mantras, and that is cash from trash. Look around and see, how can I make money? If you're raking up leaves, can you sell the leaves to people for mulch cover? Can you shred them and turn them into mulch? Can you make compost? How about this? How about somebody's paying you to cut up a tree that fell down on their land and it's trash to them and they ask you to cut it up and haul it away? How about you sell it to someone else for firewood instead of taking it to the landfill? How about you drive around on bulk pickup day and you look at all the things that people are throwing out and you can say, holy shit, I can make money off that. How about, Chris Dixon's really, really good at bringing small engines home and fixing them up and then selling them or using them. So again, if somebody's willing to pay you for something, let them give you money. Don't hate money. You guys have heard that one a bunch of times, right? And just because something isn't valuable to you doesn't mean it's not valuable to somebody else. Like I said, I brought home that Nintendo one time that I found in a dump run that was like basically new in the box. I kept it for a while. I ended up selling it and I bought enough. I used that in a couple other jobs and I paid for my garage door and the garage door opener. So if somebody, like you said, if someone thinks rust and dust turns trash into cash, then who am I to argue? Amen to that. Look around and find ways to make money. There's always ways in there. There's always ways to turn old stuff into new stuff. My TikTok channels are, I guess you could look at it that way too. It's a great example of turning trash into cash or using something exist. Anyway, taking a lot of my old videos, cutting them down to 60 seconds and then throwing them up there. Again, if people want it, let's give it to them. Number 9. And he said, it's not what you make, it's what you spend. It's not what you pay, but it's what you buy. Again, if that's not great advice, the old saying, a penny saved is a penny earned. And it's true, because you can make all the money in the world and still be broke. Because if you made $1 million and spent $1 million, 1.1 million that year, well, you went in the hole right there. Now, it pays to buy quality. Like the second part says, it's not what you pay, but it's what you buy. Now, again, you can spend half as much money on junk and then have to replace it the next year. Hey, John Palmer, good to have you. But again, it pays to buy quality. And, somebody who makes $30,000 a year can easily have more money in the bank than somebody that makes $250,000. It's all in what you spend and where you save it. Now, this one's kind of funny. This is a bit of a dialogue that Red and a character on there named Dalton had with each other. But Dalton says to Red, he says, why don't you just call for a tow truck, Red? And Red says, a tow truck? That's $100. I can replace my van for 75. I had to laugh at that one. That one always makes me chuckle. But yeah, so spend money where it's needed and justified. Like, everybody knows the guy that has the old car that if he sold it right now, could maybe sell it for $1,000, and he just put $3,000 worth of work into it and he can still sell it for $1,000. Don't throw good money after bad. Don't waste money on things you shouldn't. Invest in the things that you should. Just, don't spend, take a look at things and don't be, tied into something just because you feel obligated to it. If you have an old vehicle, look at it and say, okay, what's it going to cost me to replace? How much is it going to cost me to fix this? And is it worth it? And I know it's a bit of a joke. He's like $100 for tow truck and I can get a new van for 75. But a lot of times we do that. We joke about chickens. You spend money on chickens so that we can be self-sufficient. And that part is worth a lot. But what if we spend too much and we don't make our money back, right? And again, could look at me sometimes and I spend way too much money on a tool and justify it because I'm going to review it for you guys. But then when it comes down to it, the time or the money it saves me it'll never pay off. So just something to think about. Number 11, Red was famous for saying, if it ain't broke, you're not trying. I like that one a lot. So what do I take from that? Don't be scared to try something new. There's so often when you're trying something new, and if you're a little bit scared, you're not going to expand your horizons. You're not going to try something new. You're not going to try something that stretches your abilities. And, if something's already broke, chances are you're not going to make it worse. Now, I know a lot of you are out there saying, whoa, you can make it worse. Yeah, you probably can. But for the most part, if it's already broke, experiment, try to learn, say, hey, I haven't fixed something like this before. I want to fix it. How do I fix it? What do I do? Where do I start? And learn, experiment. Nothing wrong with that. And remember, learning something new is uncomfortable. If something's okay, if you're trying really hard and you end up breaking something, or the chance that you could break it is there. It's going to make you feel a little uncomfortable. It's going to make you a bit stressed, but in the long term, that's going to be what's going to spur you on to becoming a better handy person, a better preparedness person, a better prepper, whatever it happens to be. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to take a chance. You're going to have a chance that you can fuck up big time and you might break something. But if it ain't broke, you ain't trying. How about this one? Number 12, be generous with the duct tape. Or in other words, spare the duct tape, spoil the job. Now, I had to think about this one for a little while, but I really like it because I don't know if any of you guys have this kind of dialogue with yourself, but I'm not naturally a finisher. Now, you might think, where in the hell's Tim going with this? But I'm not. So a lot of times I would do, 95% of a job, and for whatever reason, I just mentally didn't want to finish it. So, I would get two coats of paint on the wall, and I'd look at myself and I'd say, oh, that's probably good enough, right, Tim? Or I'd put 2 ratchet straps on a load and say, oh, that's probably good enough. That little, devil on my shoulder always saying, yeah, that's enough. You can make a shortcut there. You're good. And I don't know if it's laziness or, putting things off, procrastination. I don't know, but I always struggled for a long time with that last 5% of a job. But that is where that extra duct tape comes in. That's where that extra support comes in. That's where the finish of the job comes in. How many of you ever put together or I don't know, fixed a mower or done some automotive work and you rush through it and you're like, oh, I'm done. I don't need to double check things. And then you go back and you're like, well, shit, there's 3 screws there that I didn't tighten down. And again, that's the whole idea, that duct tape, that's that extra support. Or how about you're digging a hole for a fence post and you're like, okay, I'm down 2 feet. I just hit a rock or I just hit a root. I know I need to go down 30 inches, but that little thing in your head says, nah, it's okay. It's okay. So then you're like, you think, oh, if I spent just another hour, I dug through that rock or I cut off that root. And then all of a sudden I got down to my 30 inches. Well, it's good. But if you take that shortcut, because unfortunately, a lot of times there aren't a lot of shortcuts when you're doing things like that. In a year, when the frost moves it or somebody bumps into it and it falls over, that's what you did. You spared the duct tape and you spoiled the job. And Justin, 30-day review, says, as long as you check it and say, yep, that'll hold, you're good. Yeah, that's all. That is the unofficial rule of ratchet straps. If you strap it down, you take your fingers and you flick the ratchet strap real quick and say, that's good. That's all you need. DOT pulls you over. You can say, listen, but I did it. I flicked the ratchet strap and I said, that ain't going nowhere. I don't know if it'll hold up in court, but I've tried it before. Here's a good one. Number 13, Red says, Intrepid Commander just says, can I just say there is nothing like PBN? Thanks, Toolman Tim. This is new to me. I love you, James. This is the busy time of the year, and I try so hard to keep up with everybody, but I really consider James a close friend, and we've only known each other for about a year, but he is an awesome guy. And you are very welcome, James, and I'll send some videos your way. Actually, James recently got me turned on to VR as well. Just picked up a VR headset, and I've been starting to do some gun training in VR, which is kind of cool. So anyway, how about this one? Red says, you ever notice that fast burning fuse looks exactly like slow burning fuse? Well, I didn't. I had a lot. You could just mentally picture this story, right? Pay attention to the details. And I know it's simple, but if you're in a hurry and you pick up 2 fuses or you pick up 2 screws and you think, oh yeah, that's the right one. And then you go to tighten it down. You're like, oh shit, that was the metric screw. And I just put it back in the hole for the standard or the imperial threads. And I just stripped all the threads. And now I'm 8 hours into a 30-minute job. Pay attention. You put an engine back together and you forgot 2 or 3 bolts. Or worse than that, you left 2 or 3 bolts down inside the engine when you put it together. Also, for those of you that don't know, and some of you will, there's a difference between blue and red Loctite. One's permanent, one's just really, really strong. Now, like he said, always pay attention because fast burning and slow burning fuses look identical. You're going to have yourself a bad day. I remember one time I picked up a bottle. So in Nova Scotia on the East Coast, we used to have a type of pop called Big 8. It was just a generic brand that Sobeys sold. And one time I was down in the basement and I seen a 2-liter bottle of Big 8 grape soda sitting on my dad's shop bench. And I picked that up, had the lid off it, and was about to chug some out of the bottle when Dad hollered, "Stop!" He had put some kind of caustic cleaner in that bottle. I know. This was, the 80s or early 90s. Shit happens. Nothing happened, but I wasn't paying attention. When I looked, I realized that's like a bright blue. That's not purple pop at all. But anyway, pay attention to the details. Otherwise, you might get blown up. Arizona Renaissance Man says cross threads are better than no threads. That is very true. And then just give it a tap with the hammer and you're all set. Number 14. I like this one. He had a way of saying funny things or saying true things in a funny way. But he said, you don't want to argue with anyone that is larger than your van. I think that's rules to live by right there, because you're just going to have yourself a bad day. Now, here's the thing. You can be right and still end up dead. You can be the righteous person getting in a fight and still have your block knocked off. So don't pick a fight with somebody ever, really, if you can help it, because the best way to win a fight is to never get in one, right? But, just because geez, I'm in the right here. But if you're going to end up, because what's the number one rule of survival? Don't end up dead, right? So don't ever get in a fight that you're not going to win, and just stay away from fights altogether. Again, keep your head down. Don't bring undue attention to yourself. Be a gray man if you have to. But really, when it comes down to it, don't go looking for a fight. And man, don't go looking for a fight that somebody's bigger than your goddamn van, because you're going to end up having a really bad day or a short life, one or the other. How about this one here? Red says, all it takes is a little imagination, some mechanical ability, and neighbors who mind their own business. I had to laugh at that because, yeah, imagination's great. Mechanical ability is great. But also your situation in life is, in other words, control what you can control. Pick a good place to live. When you're looking for somewhere new, do I have a lot of distance from my neighbors, or are the neighbors nice? Because bad neighbors can make your life really miserable. I always had to read the Robert Frost poem in, what was it called? Mending a Wall, something like that, in high school. And one of his favorite things was good fences make good neighbors. In other words, when you're picking somewhere to live, do your best you can to figure out what the neighborhood's like, what the people are like, because bad neighbors can ruin your day really, really quick. So having neighbors that mind their own business is worth their weight in gold. Or bribe them. If you have chickens, give them eggs. If you have rhubarb, give them preserves, whatever it is. Next one. Being dangerous is what gets the juices flowing. Those juices are adrenaline, testosterone, and hydrogen peroxide. So in other words, again, don't take unnecessary risks. I mean, we all love to get adrenaline flowing for whatever it is. Like I had Greg on the show the other day, and he was talking about how he was an adrenaline junkie and how he loved to go into minefields checking for mines. Like that was his thing. But he wasn't, but some people aren't comfortable public speaking. Now for me, I just love it. It just gets me excited. It gets my adrenaline flowing. But for whatever it is, don't take unnecessary risks. Know your risk tolerance, guys. Like, know what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable working on a roof, great, do it. Take the necessary precautions. But if you're not, don't do it. Because if you're up on a roof and you're shaking and shivering like an old leaf about to fall off at the the end of autumn, then hire somebody to do that. But know what you can do, because you're going to end up hurting yourself if you frig around and find out, right? And also keep a good first aid kit around. When we take risks, there's always that chance that we're going to hurt ourselves. You can put your hand on a hot muffler from a mower. If you're trying to fix something and you're being stupid, you can, almost cut your finger off when you probably should have been sleeping instead of cutting plastic. I don't know. But if you get in over your head, take risks, but don't take them so wildly that you have no chance of success. Because again, you don't want to hurt yourself. Martinson family, got to show some respect there. Says best times looking for mines, 21 field engineers forever. I tell you, you guys are a special breed. It's not something that I would have been comfortable doing, but I think it's pretty cool that some people had the calling for doing that. This one's good. Number 17, talking about something that he's fixing at the time. And he goes, now, this is only temporary unless it works. So in other words, learn how to troubleshoot. I remember when I used to fix computers at the House of Stationery, and I discovered that Troubleshooting was just trying a bunch of things until you figured out something that worked. Now, the thing is, temporary solutions are great. If you find a temporary solution that works, that's good. If you can get your furnace up and running for the weekend until the stores reopen, great. But don't forget about that temporary fix. And that's where the joke comes in, unless it works, he says. In other words, hey, if I fixed it, I don't need to worry about it. But if you manage to, like, I don't know, tape up your belt, for instance, your fan belt on your furnace, and that got you through till Monday, well, don't leave it there until, 3 weeks from now, and then it finally shreds and you're totally hooped. Be happy that you managed to come up with a temporary fix. But remember, there's a big key on temporary. Go back and replace it later on. I always joke about this, but in my hometown, my home school, we had a wing in there called the 67 wing because it was built in 1967. It was a white wooden classroom that turned out that it was a 1-year portable classroom brought in 1967, and it was still there 32 years later when I graduated in 1999. So again, that's the government for you, but this is only temporary unless it works. Justin says, I'm a firefighter. We have a saying, risk a lot to save a lot, risk a little to save a little. I like that. Yeah, that's great. That's something to live by. I guess it depends on what the, like you said, what the reward, risk versus reward there is. And if you got a bunch of people, well, anyway, I don't want to speak from experience that I'm not, right? So, you know what? I've told that story a few times. Justin says his high school had the same. That seemed to be one of those things. They built temporary schools for a year or temporary classrooms, and they ended up sticking around. Like I said, 1967 till 99 or 2000 when they finally got rid of it. Next one. Red says, learn from my mistakes because someone should. Yeah, I like that, right? If you can't be a good example, be a bad example. And it's okay to make mistakes. Here's the thing. I tell people this a lot. They're like, well, I made a mistake. I screwed up. You're allowed to make mistakes. What you're not allowed to do is not learn from the damn mistake. So if you make a mistake and you screw something up, learn from it. Say, okay, well, what the hell did I do wrong here? What is it? I don't know. Look at it or ask somebody. Say, like, I really frigged up here. Why did I do it? And then go back and learn the lesson. Or say you broke something. Say you over-tightened something. I used to be really good at that. Make things Tim-tight, and I would over-torque them and break things. I know my own strength now, and I tend not to do that. But I had to make those mistakes for a long time. So I'd finally learn from them, right? But that also says be willing to take advice so that if somebody else messed up and had a huge, just screwed up big time, and they're like, listen, I'm telling you, if you do that, you're going to have a bad day. Take a minute and listen to them. But also be willing to share your mistakes with people so that other people don't do it. Be open about it. When you tell other people, like, hey, I did this. This was dumb. I went flat broke. I shouldn't have because I spent too much money, or I tried to, turn up the speed on the fan in my furnace to help, cool the house down in the summertime. And all I did was, break the bearings or through a fan blade and cost me way too much money. But you know what? Share your mistakes. Because so often people on social media and podcasters and whatever, they talk about all the good things they've done, but they never talk about their flub ups. And if we're not willing to, because everything I've ever learned has been learned either because I made a mistake or someone else made a mistake. Because you learn so much more when you break something or do something wrong than you ever do from doing something right. And number 19, Red Green said, you're only limited by your own imagination and the laws in your area. I had to laugh at that. But in other words, first off, think outside the box. There's so often that you might be, thinking back to the Going Home, I think it was the Going Home book series, or a lot of those preparedness book series. And people will be starving to death simply because they didn't know that some of that food, some of the greenery out there was edible. So they're starving to death with food all around them because they, didn't know or just didn't think outside the box, didn't have any imagination. I don't know, whatever it is. They just got in this box of thinking about things that they couldn't change their mindset. So look around, see like, okay, what can I use for this really? And then try something, like again, I use this fan belt thing, but if you're in the middle of nowhere, what can you use? The old wives' tale of using your wife's nylons to get you back to town. Well, maybe, I don't know. Try it. See what happens. But then the other part is the laws in your area. So again, like I said, don't bring undue attention to yourself. Just be a gray man. And advice I always give my kids was don't break more than one law at once. Because if you get pulled over for speeding and not wearing your seatbelt, well, there's a good chance that you're going to get a ticket for one of those. But if you get pulled over for speeding or not wearing your seatbelt, if you get the right cop, you might just get off for the day. I don't know. Anyway, like you said, you're only limited by your own imagination and the laws in your area. So that was the wisdom of Red Green, guys. We did it in about 50 minutes. So I think we got time if you guys are game. I ran across this article the other day, and I've had it in my notes for a couple of months, and I was waiting where I might have a little shorter show to throw it in. And I thought I would read it. I've kind of abbreviated it a little. Try that again, Tim. I abbreviated it so that you guys, so that I'm not reading 3-4 pages worth of an article. But the whole idea, and I thought it would be kind of fun just to discuss this. I'll bring it up. I'll talk about it. And, whether you guys bring it up in the chat tonight or think about it later, I just thought it was kind of interesting. And it's one of those, what would you do? And it's about a lady who lives in Cape Breton, which is Nova Scotia, where I was born. And she moved from out of the area and came there and bought some land. And anyway, let me read you this, and you guys tell me what you think. And I'll stop for some commentary on my way through. It's not that long. It's about a page and a half here or whatever. But so here it goes. Private property signs removed, ropes and chains ripped down, angry words and vehicles blocked from leaving a dirt road have all accelerated a dispute involving access to a shoreline in the small community in Cape Breton. Typical news, like to blow things up or whatever. But anyway, so this dirt road this lady now lives on or runs through her property has been used by this small community in Sydney since the 1800s. There was once a lighthouse out there, military installations, the Second World War, and it's been used by the community for generations to access the shoreline and the sandbar. The land she owns includes the dirt road that leads to that beach. It's the easiest way, but not the only way to access the Sandbar Beach, which is owned by the local government. All right. So this lady's name is Kat, and she doesn't sound like she's yes, Liberty says easement access issues. So this lady named Kat does not sound like she's a very pleasant lady to be around. And growing up on the East Coast, I know that locals don't take well to people who are from away, as they like to use the term. So here's how it went. Over the past few months, the property owner, Kat, says she doesn't want strangers on her property. Okay, I get it. Has been blocking the road in a variety of ways. She's put up private property signs, no trespassing signs, caution tape, ropes, even chains to block the road. They've all been torn down by people in the community. Kat has used her own vehicle to block people who use the road from leaving. Arizona Renaissance Man says realtor should have disclosed this before the sale. So there is a bit of this at the very end here, and it's going to be interesting. I'll keep going, and you guys tell me what you think. Liberty says if it's been in use that long, there should have been some kind of easement clause. At least there would have been here in the U.S., and there should be in Canada as well. But for me, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking there's got to be a better way, because both the locals are being dicks and the owner is being a huge dick. And the problem is, I'll tell you guys a quick story, but years ago, a homeless person was sleeping in my mom and dad's backyard. They had put up a hammock, and they were living underneath where my old treehouse used to be, far enough back in the woods that we found out they were there, made us rather uncomfortable. And of course, me, hothead, being like 20 years old at the time, I wanted to go back and cut it down and burn it. And within rights, I could have. We called the cops. I talked to the cop, and he's like, listen, this is what you need to do. He said, you put a sign up, and you say, hey, you need to remove this by this time. And if you haven't, we're going to take it down. He said, and then in a couple of days, you take it down and you leave it there. And then if they come back, they take it with them. But if they don't, you eventually throw it away. And I said, well, why would I do that? He says, well, listen, you can legally go back there and cut that down right now, burn it, throw it in the garbage. He said, but you might just as likely end up with a rock through your window. I thought, okay. So he's saying, yeah, there's technically the letter of the law. You're in the right, but also you need to look at, am I going to bring down undue hellfire from people that don't like me because I haven't been I don't know, part of this, and this is an interesting kind of topic here for sure. Liberty says she's definitely not making friends with her new neighbors and community. Exactly, right? So Kat used her own vehicle to block people in. This lady, Paula Marsh, says she blocked us in for a good 20 minutes. She was stopped from leaving the road by Kat. It was just so she could be mean to us, right? She just wanted to lecture and yell at us. Marsh said she was out for a drive with her son when she spotted the familiar sandbar. Hadn't been down there in 40 years. She saw another lady down there with a dog. She said, "Look, it's beautiful. Let's go down." The pair checked, said they saw no trespass. They didn't see any no trespassing signs, and they drove down the dirt road. On the way back from the highway, they noticed the lady approaching them. Saw a car pulling in. I was driving, and I said, "Oh, well, she's a lot closer to the exit, so she'll back up and turn around." She didn't, and my son said, "I think she wants to talk to us. She looks a little pissed off." And Justin says they're humans and that's all they have. Yes. So Marsh said Kat then wrote down her license plate number after refusing to let them leave. And after about 15 minutes of blocking her, she finally let her go. Marsh and her son were back on the highway home. Marsh said she'll never go back there again. I get it. So Marsh's confrontation with Kat isn't uncommon, according to the locals. Kat said police told her to write down the license plate numbers of trespassers. She said that she's had a total of 35 to date. I still, no matter how I read this, and maybe it's part of me from being from the East Coast, and I know, we believe in the right to own your own property and enjoy it, but I still think there's a better way to do this. She goes, "It's not just with my neighbors, it's with the community and whoever else. I'm one person. I'm a senior who wants to retire on my property that I paid for, that I pay taxes for. So I don't know. I have not known personally any of these 35 people." She said, "I do not know them. I've never seen them before. I don't know why they're there, except for I've seen the garbage they leave behind, the needles, the broken bottles, the torn up grass." She said, "I don't know which one of them's a drug user or not." I get it. You see where they're both coming from. The locals have been using that right away for 200 years. She buys it and decides, "I need to block it off because I want to build a home on it." So she's building her retirement home. She's lived there for about 11 years now. Owned the land for 11 years, just started building a house recently. She's also started building her, okay, here we go. She also started building her retirement home on the property, which she said has raised tensions. Okay. She said, and here's where I think she was being kind of sensible. She goes, "I thought that if I gave people a heads up that I was going to do something this summer by blocking it off, by putting signs up, by putting ropes up, I even put a chain there, but they cut through the chain link." So I thought in that instance, she is being kind of sensible. McGrath, a local who is originally from the area, has used the road to get to the beach for decades. Not just for, apparently it was a bird watching too, right? Yeah. So, Liberty, this is exactly it. So she has owned the land for 11 years. Between 2009 and 2011, she bought 2 parcels of land, which are together. And she just recently started blocking the ease of access. So yeah, that's a good one, Liberty. I never thought about. Hey, Prep and Patriot, good to have you. So this McGrath said that he's been going down there for about 30 years, doing a lot of bird watching, whatever, it doesn't matter. Typical news stuff, right? Said has not used the road to the beach since he saw Kat putting up yellow tape across the road. Okay. So he said, and I thought this guy was pretty sensible too. And here's where it gets kind of whatever. He said, "So I decided to carry on and drive away," said McGrath. Said about 20 minutes later, there were actually 2 cars parked down there nose to nose, and there were 2 ladies, and it looked like they were fighting or arguing. Liberty says, "I call shenanigans. She has no issues until now." Yeah, there's something going on there. Apparently there's a bit of a fight between 2 neighbors as well when she started building. I don't know. Anyway, but the guy said, "So I didn't bother pulling in. I just carried on." Now, here's the other thing. There are other ways to the beach. They just take a little bit longer. And it's still possible by walking from other public places, such as the nearby Polar Bear Beach. And then, of course, you get this small town carrying on. It says others have jumped onto social media sites to say that the road is legally a right-of-way for the public, something that hasn't been proven. Kat has also hired lawyers on her part and is fighting it. Kat says the property is hers, and it's unlikely there will be a compromise where the road can be shared. "We're waiting for the facts. We're waiting for the truth," she said. "And if by chance there's a public road there and my lawyer made a mistake and my real estate agent made a mistake, it's going up for sale." So it sounds to me like she was under the impression when she bought it that there was no easement or public right of way on that land. The land on the other end is government owned. So no matter what you think of it, whatever. So let's go through. Justin says, well, if she just started building, it makes sense. It's now an issue. And Liberty said she's allowed the access, allowing the easement, and that right of way and easement can be difficult to fight. So here's the thing. I'm not even super concerned about where the law ends up on this, because when it comes down to it, the law can rule in your favor, and the law can say, you can block this road off. But when I was a kid, we had a highway cop in our town, and he was fair. He would give people tickets. He would give people warnings. And then he retired, and a new young cop come in and took over. And he wanted to make a name for himself. And he pulled everybody over constantly, giving them tickets, chewing them out, just being a righteous dick. And he was legally in the right of way. And then one day in the mail, he got a 9mm shell in the mail. I mean, no return address, but a thinly veiled threat. So he went and found the other guy that used to be there that retired, an old guy with a handlebar mustache that used to smoke a cigar all the time. And he said, listen, he said, you're right. I know you're right. But remember, you got to live here too. And to me, that's what it come down to. This is the whole idea. This is what I was kind of trying to dig into with this, was where do we go with this? So if you are buying land from out of town and you move in, how do you become part of the town without being despised by the town? And how do you secure your land without getting into huge fights? Because again, remember, don't pick a fight with somebody who's bigger than your van, right? A town is bigger than your van. And no matter what, if you get the right to do it, you're going to end up having a bad day. You could end up having your house burned down, because old boys, you know what they're like. You could end up having a rock through your windshield, or nails thrown under your car. Whatever it happens to be. I don't know, is there a way? Maybe she could say, hey, I'm going to allow access for the next year until the town figures out, or until everybody goes in there, or maybe they do a grace period. I don't know either way, but there has to be you gotta look at that. And this is where I brought this in, and I hope I'm not going way off on a tangent here, but I thought it was a good place to throw it in on the end. But when you're moving somewhere, you got to live there, right? So you need to figure out a way to make this work. And I don't know if there's an easy way to make it work, because she probably is in the right. She owns the land. I don't know. But again, it's being, yeah, exactly. Liberty says, stop being such a Karen and an out-of-towner coming in and throwing up signs and chains. Here's my thing. Where I grew up, this would be fairly easy. You would just let people drive down the road. And I get it. And I'm totally fine with that. And that's probably what it is. Maybe put up some signs and say, please slow down. And if people are driving and being idiots, or maybe put up a sign and say, listen, I don't mind people coming down here, but please respect the property. Or maybe, what do they say? You catch more flies with honey. Maybe take a minute and chat with the people. But instead of being an asshole Karen and blocking people in and screaming at them for 30 minutes, maybe have a chat with them and say, listen, I get it. I know you want to come here, but there's a place 20 minutes down the road that you can get on in through here as well. And I'm just a little old lady who'd love to sit down and retire in peace. And I'm sure you'd love to do that too. If you want to come down, come and knock on the door and say, hey, can I travel down here? Or call or have a chat, because it seemed like she was worried about drug users down there. Well, if you know the people that are going down, maybe you won't feel so bad about it. So get to know the people. I don't know. There's no simple answer to this kind of thing, but boy, I'm telling you. Prep and Patriot said, if it is used that actively as well, whether she wins or not, I see more destruction or them still doing it. Doesn't make sense to me to keep it and continue to deal with the problems. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe that's it. Maybe, again, we always used to joke about all these people that would move from Ontario down to like Digby Neck Islands, where there's literally nothing. And they'd move to get away from everything. And all they'd ever do was complain about how far they were from anything. So remember, when you're moving to a new town, you might need to learn a new language, a new dialect, at least a new dictionary. And you need to learn the unspoken rules, and you need to learn how to get along with other people, because even if you're right, you can still have your ass handed to you, right? 30 Day says, yeah, probably not a huge issue unless the lots of land are on each side of the road and everything she is finding is on her land. Then no matter what, it's an issue. Yeah. And also not hard to tear up half the road and turn it into a driveway. Yeah, exactly. Right. There's so many things that can be done. But I Googled her name tonight, and that's the only story with her name in it. So I don't know where it ended up. But Martinson family says the community needs to police itself with littering, especially bottles or needles. You know what, Martinson? That's one of the best. That's spoken like a true small towner, right? I love that. That's great. And you were absolutely right. The community does need to police itself. So maybe somebody from the town goes and chats with her and said, listen, do you think you could let us come through here? We'll work on it. We'll slow it down. Maybe we'll put some bumps in the road, some speed bumps. I don't know. But also, we'll make sure the riffraff doesn't come down here. And again, if you make friends with the right people, you don't have to worry about the wrong people. It's just one of those interesting case studies. And I think I'll do more of these articles down the road, because I kind of enjoy them. They spur on a lot of conversation. And again, there's no easy or simple solution. And you can look at it and say, well, she's right. She owns the land. But again, you can be right and still end up with a house burnt down, right? Liberty says community government could always go eminent domain and buy that access road. Yeah, they sure could too. I think the biggest problem is that it's just a small podunk municipality where there's no funds available for it. And I don't think I'd want that to happen either. And this shouldn't have happened. When it comes right down to it, I think I put more of the blame on the lady who moved there, because she ended up just being an asshole about it. And I think if she'd have taken some time and thought about it and approached things differently, she might not have had any issues at all. But instead, she had to go just the way she was. And now she's made herself a community full of enemies. And that's not what you want. I mean, if we want to have a bug out location, or we want to have a place where we want to go and retire to, again, we got to learn how to live there. I think about Glenn Tate, author of 299 Days, and he recently moved to Montana. And it appears to me like he has done a wonderful job of moving into small town Montana. And I think it's great. I love to see that, because the opposite is when you go somewhere and you try to change it to what you know or what you think. Exactly. Liberty says, yeah, this is good. New owner never bothered to get to know the local community and see how things are. And 30 Day says, kind of wonder how many times she asked people not to use it before she started to block things. And that could be it too, right? And like I said, maybe if she'd have went, take some time, things, I'll tell you, change happens very slow in small towns. And if you tell people they can't do something, it makes them want to do it more. And if you put a chain up in front of something, guys are going to haul it down with ATVs, or they're going to cut it in half with a cordless grinder, whatever it happens to be. But like I said, I think personally, and if you guys have other thoughts on this or want to follow up with me, throw it into the comments below, or send it to me on social. We can keep chatting about it. But I think I've beat, what they say, you beat a dead horse too much and all you get's a bigger mess, right? And Letty says she has all kinds of questions. I get it. And there just wasn't that much more there. I didn't cut anything out other than a couple of paragraphs about bird watching and some local media fluff, but I just didn't want it to get so long that it got boring. So anyway, I thought it was a kind of a cool case study. I think, maybe once a month I'll pick a news story like this and we can tear it apart and discuss it. It's kind of fun coming at it from an anarchist voluntarist point of view, but it also is fun to come at these things with a practical point of view to see, hey, where we, how we have to live there. We have to deal with it, whatever it is. Right. So anyway, that's enough of that for this evening, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate you dropping by. So where do we go from here? This was a great episode. I always love this good conversation. And in the middle of summer like this, the fact that you guys still show up blesses my heart. No, but I mean it. It really does. I really, really appreciate that you guys come and hang out with me in the middle of summer. So what's coming up next? Tomorrow on PBN, Prepper Broadcast Network, is Carl A.D. Brown with The Strange Truth, where he talks about Christianity and the news stories that no one else dares touch. Carl has a really cool cadence to his voice, a really interesting dude to listen to, and he is so smart. Love talking to him in the behind the scenes channels that we have, and just a great all around group of content creators over on PBN. So if you're not checking it out, go by and check out PBN. They're awesome. And James does great over there. Always appreciate him. And where am I heading this week? Okay. So I did have a plan for Saturday evening show, but now I may have a live in studio guest, part of my extended community that may be coming on. So tune in one way or the other. We're going to have an awesome Saturday evening show. And Sunday, we have a special guest in who's coming to talk about electric vehicles from Gingerbread Farms. I put out the feelers and I wanted to get someone that could come in and talk about it. And I believe I found an expert. So I'm quite excited. And yeah, so from there, guys, that's pretty much it. We got all kinds of exciting guests coming up. I got the Cam and Colby from the Casual Preppers podcast. Friggin' hilarious guys. They're going to be on coming up pretty soon. Like I said, we've got Man Tracker. If you guys remember that show, he is coming on as well. Thank you, James. Always appreciate you. And I've just got some great guests coming up, some great content. And I love doing this. This is my calling, and I appreciate you guys. This long form content is always so much fun. And one more quick plug for the Canadian Coffee Company.ca, especially for my Canadian listeners out there. Just go by and check it out. The coffee's incredible and it's awesome. Thanks across the board. We had Liberty over in Telegram. We had some guys over in the PBN chat room, and of course, all of you guys. So thank you guys. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.